So should we asking Jessica to start us with some music? It is 6:30.
Oh. Jessica, or you?
I will be absolutely delighted to join us to lead us in music as soon as we have some words on the screen.
Okay, I want to show who's leading the music first, and then we can go ahead and share the music.
So I'd like to invite you all to sing along, but with your microphones on mute. Otherwise, they will all be off by a second or two.
Actually, okay, Jessica, allow me to mute all, and you're going to have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Okay, just to make sure that we've got everybody covered. Yeah. If you can unmute yourself again, and then we'll be able to hear you sing and play. Thank you.
There we go. So the first of our 3 musical offerings, and I really do strongly encourage you and invite you to join in, is found in More Voices 10. Come and seek the ways of wisdom, she who danced when earth was new. Follow closely what she teaches, for her words are right and true. Wisdom clears the path to justice, showing us what love must do. Listen to the voice of wisdom crying in the marketplace. Hear the word made flesh among us, full of glory, truth, and grace. When the word takes root and ripens, peace and righteousness embrace. Sister wisdom, come assist us, nurture all who seek rebirth. Spirit guide and close companion, bring to light our sacred worth. Free us to become your people, holy friends of God and earth. And let's continue with Nos voix unies, Seigneur, tu cherches tes enfants. Seigneur, tu cherches tes enfants, car tu es l'amour. Tu veux unir tous les vivants grâce à ton amour. Seigneur, Seigneur, oh, prends ton Église, tous les peuples de la terre dans un même amour. Seigneur, tu sauves par ta mort, car tu tu calmes notre faim, car tu es amour. Partage à tous le même pain, grâce à ton amour. Seigneur, Seigneur, oh, prends en ton Église tous les peuples de la terre dans ce même amour. Seigneur, tu vois le monde entier, car tu es l'amour. Fais-lui trouver son unité grâce à ton amour. Seigneur, Seigneur, oh, prends en ton Église tous les peuples de la terre dans un même amour. Seigneur, tu ne promets la paix, car tu es l'amour. Étends ton règne désormais grâce à ton amour. Seigneur, Seigneur, oh, prends en ton Église tous les peuples de la terre dans un même amour. And to bring in some of the richness of our older musical tradition, let's sing Veni Creator. Holy Spirit, by whose breath life
Thank you, Jessica. Kent, I believe you will give us the special instructions how to prepare for this meeting. Oh, I believe most people.
Reminder. Yeah. Quick lesson on how to unmute yourself coming up in just a moment. Oh, so good to see everybody. And something new for this session is that if you are an animator of the small groups, if you would please put the letter A in front of your language code. The language code is BB for bilingual, EE for English, FF for French. Many of you are used to that, but we always have new folk, and so we do run over things. Then your name, then your faith community, your pronouns. I think after that, maybe it's your postal code. I'm not sure. No, that's enough. Et je vais le dire en français aussi parce que la traduction, je n'ai pas expliqué encore. C'est si vous êtes animateur des petits groupes, si vous pouvez mettre une lettre A avant votre nom. Et pour tout le monde, avant votre nom, un code BB pour bilingue, EE pour English, FF pour français, votre nom, votre communauté de foi et vos pronoms. Et toujours, veuillez, s'il vous plaît, ajouter un X au commencement si vous n'avez pas la droite de vote. Ensuite, la dernière chose que je vais dire dans toutes les deux langues, c'est que l'interprétation est disponible. Vous allez voir en bas de votre écran, il y a une sélection pour interprétation et vous pouvez faire le choix entre anglais et français. So last thing I'm saying in both languages is that interpretation is available. Go to the bottom of your screen and you'll see that you have a choice when you click on interpretation of English or French. And if you're working on a tablet, then you need to tap on the more. Si vous avez une tablette, tapez sur le more pour avoir accès à la traduction, l'interprétation. So I'm going to assume that everybody is following that. The most important thing is what I just forgot a minute ago, and that's if we're going to hear you, you have to unmute yourself. Everybody is muted. If you are asked to speak, then you would unmute yourself. Otherwise, we ask that people stay muted so that we don't have 15, 20 voices and hearing the television in the background and the cat and the dog. So please stay muted, but when you are asked to speak, please turn it on. It's very similar on the tablet, on the computer screen. It's the bottom left. C'est pas mal même chose avec une tablette. Vous allez voir qu'il y a un micro en bas de l'écran. Ah, vous ne le voyez pas. Il faut taper sur l'écran pour voir le petit micro pour allumer le son pour que nous puissions vous entendre. C'est ça. The other thing that I'd like to point out is the chat. Again, that's at the bottom of the screen. And if you click on that, then you'll be able to enter chat messages down near the bottom right, usually on your screen, unless you change it and move it like I do. The next thing is when you wish to speak, you need to raise your hand, and there's absolutely no use raising your hand in front of the camera because we currently have 62 participants and there's usually only like 5 or 6 showing on our screens. So the only way to raise your hand is to do so electronically. And so I invite you now to click on reactions at the bottom of your screen. On the tablet, it's the same thing. You're going to be tapping on it. And please raise your hand so I get an idea that people are actually able to do it. Veuillez, s'il vous plaît, lever vos mains pour que on peut savoir que ça va bien marcher. Parce que sinon, pendant la réunion, on n'aura jamais accès à vos suggestions, vos commentaires, vos idées précieuses. Okay, I'm Judy, Joel. I'm looking at who's not got a hand up yet. I know. Okay. All right.
And
Eh?
then do you realize that you're not spotlighted, so you are a tiny little picture with everybody else?
I spotlit here, so
I don't. Spotlight is not shown here on my screen.
I'm not sure why. Let me re-spotlight myself. But I think everybody else had me here, certainly on my monitor.
Now it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody's able to raise their hand. That's wonderful. Now I just have to know how to put everybody's hand back down again. Oh, oh dear. Yeah. Okay, I'll figure that out. No rush. Ah, there. Somebody did it. Thank you much. OK, je me demande si j'ai d'autres choses à vous dire. Ça, c'est les plus importants entre tout. Ouais, c'est ça. Donc, we're on to the next thing, Mark.
Yes, so the next thing on our script is Reverend Robert Patton. Robert, are you there?
I'm here.
You come in. There you go. Great, Robert. So I'm sure that Kent will spotlight you. So can you please lead us into our Thanksgiving prayer?
Okay.
And welcome.
I'll
Good to see
start
you.
off. I'll start off in Mohawk for a few. Anagadis kanagunda dawadu. Yetinowarada na ngwasungwa. Gadi niyotuak na gwanigura. Anagadis kanagura dawadu. Yetinowarada na ngwanista hoja. This evening, I'd like to share with you the Thanksgiving address that has been passed down from generation to generation. This opening is used before all important events. It means the words before all words. As we gather each day, it is our responsibility that we give a greeting, love, and thanks to each other as peoples. We gather each and every day and respect how fragile life is, but understand how lucky we are to be walking on this earth and that we are in good health. It is important for us to come to one mind and understand that each and every day when we meet up with someone, that's a ceremony and we need to honor that. So today we gather our minds together as one. We give greetings and love and thanks to all the people that walk this earth and give thanks to our Creator. And we come together as one and we are agreed. Now we turn our minds to the earth and recognize her as our mother. And we have a relationship with her, that she takes care of us. And as our mother, we have a responsibility to give her that same love and respect that we give our mothers in all our nations. And we realize that everything we need to have a good life, to have peace in our minds, to have a strong, nice, strong, and healthy body, it's all in front of us. It is coming from that entity we refer to as our mother, Ngwatnistaha. It is our responsibility then to give back and not take too much and to take care of her. So we gather our minds together and give greetings and love and thanks to the sustainer of our life, Ngwatnistaha Ohoja, our mother, the earth. Now our minds are one. Now we turn our minds to the waters of the world and we give thanks to all the waters for quenching our thirst and providing us with strength. Water is life. We know its power in many forms: waterfalls and rain, mist and streams, rivers and oceans. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the spirit of the water. And now our minds are one. We turn our minds to all the fish life in the water. They were instructed to cleanse and purify the water. They also give themselves to us as food, and we are grateful that we can still find pure water. So we turn now to the fish life and send our greetings and thanks, and now our minds are one. Now we turn our minds to the vast fields of plant life. As far as the eye can see, the plants grow, working many wonders. They sustain many life forms. With our minds gathered together, we give thanks and look forward to seeing plant life for many generations to come. And now our minds are one. With one mind, we now turn to honor and thank all the food plants we harvest from our gardens. Since the beginning of time, the grains, the berries, the vegetables, our three sisters, beans, corn, and squash, and we have helped the people survive. Many other living things draw strength from them. We gather all the plant foods together as one, and we send our greetings and thanks. And now our minds are one. And now we turn to all the medicines, the herbs of the world. From the beginning, that were instructed to take away illness, sickness. They were always wanting and ready to heal us. And we are happy there are still among us those special few who remember how to use these plants for healing. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to the medicines and keepers of the medicines. And now our minds are one. We gather our minds together to send greetings and thanks to all the animal life in the world. They have many things to teach us as people. We are honored by them when they give up their lives so we can use their bodies as food for our people. We see them near our homes and in the deep forests. And we are glad they're still here and hope that it will always be so. And now our minds are one. We now turn our thoughts to the trees. The earth has many families of trees who have their own instructions and uses. Some provide us with shelter and shade, others with fruit, beauty, and other useful things. Many people of the world use a tree as a symbol of peace and strength. With one mind, we greet and thank the tree life. Now our minds are one. We put our minds together as one and thank all the birds who move and fly above our heads. The Creator gave them beautiful songs. Each day they remind us to enjoy and appreciate life. The eagle was chosen to be their leader. To all the birds, from the smallest to the largest, we send our joyful greetings and thanks. And now our minds are one. We are all thankful to the powers we know as the four winds. We hear their voices in the moving air as they refresh us and purify the air we breathe. They help us to bring the changing of the seasons. From the four directions, they come bringing us messages, giving us strength. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to the four winds. And now our minds are one. And now we turn to the west, where our grandfathers, Radiweras, the thunder beings, live. With lightning and thundering voices, they bring with them the water that renews life. We are thankful that they keep those evil things made by Sawiskara underground. We bring our minds together as one and send greetings and thanks to our grandfathers, the thunderers. And now our minds are one. Now we send greetings and thanks to our eldest brother, the sun. Each day without fail, he travels the sky from the east to the west, bringing the light of a new day. He is the source of all fires of light. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to our brother, the sun. And now our minds are one. We put our minds together and give thanks to our oldest grandmother, the moon, who lights the night sky. She is the leader of women all over the world, and she governs the movement of the ocean tides. By her changing face, we measure time and it is the moon who watches over the arrival of children here on earth. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to our grandmother, the moon, and now our minds are one. We give thanks to the stars who are spread across the sky like jewels. We see them in the night, helping the moon to light the darkness and bringing dew to the gardens and growing things. When we travel at night, they guide us home. With our minds gathered together as one, we send greetings and thanks to the stars, and now our minds are one. We gather our minds to greet and thank the enlightened teachers who have come throughout the ages. When we forget how to live in harmony, they remind us of the way we were instructed to live as people. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the caring teachers, and now our minds are one. Now we turn our minds to the Creator or Great Spirit and send greetings and thanks for all the beauty and the gifts of creation. Everything we need to live a good life is here on Mother Earth that our Creator has provided. For all the love that is still around, we gather our minds together as one and send our choicest words of greeting and thanks to Sugaya Dizu, our Creator. Yamokoa, and now our minds are one. Now we have arrived at the place where we end our words. Of all the things we have named, it was not our intention to leave anything out. If something was forgotten, we leave it to each individual to send such greetings and thanks in our own way. And now our minds are one to. Amen.
Thank
Amen.
you. Thank you, Robert. We are always grateful for these words.
Thank you. Thank you.
They always cause a speed above our heartbeat. Samantha Pepin, I believe, has joined us. Yes, Samantha. And will you welcome us to this land?
Samantha Waniziri. I'm from Ganastag Mohawk territory, and I'm representing my Dura, my grandfather, Harvey Satewas Gabriel, who is the translator of Ohiato Sarotogati, which is the Mohawk Bible. For those that have seen it or have not seen it, this beautiful thing here. So I'll be doing some readings today. Today we have chosen Acts chapter 1, verses 15 to 26, if I'm not mistaken. So I didn't have a lot of time to prepare, but bear with me while I bless this reading. There we go.
Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you, everybody, Nakonha, for having me here. Tokara nuta onaganke wahuntganizane done dakwas. Gaknune askat dewat nyawe danun dewasa ni hadikwa. Danune jerd wadadene nahadadi. Dewarozunhas waharu nori wadogati. Deyadu wajohune nyagari wayeritene zi nihori wagu kanunine. Doni guriostu zi nihodadi raunhage ne Dawid. Ohadu dotrorine zitas raunhage raua yezagoza linu zi ruwaya nahune Yesus. Judas dahya daragwe nugwajokwagu azega ruwaya darakwane nahosnie nunke naungwayo darasa nungwahyo da zera. Noistane Judas doyena uzi nihode waya naksadu waa he taninute donuwe ya yetsane zahne zi wara eye excuse me. Wata tene kwa tanegare tanu agwegune da hia dagun di hia gane agwegu nungwesua ne Jerusalem nueni ya nagere waheri warunke di nahawane gwagadi di ni nihuru gadzero dane to gahadage ne wahadi nadunque ne akeldama di nigatus yune guazare ne kahadage di hiadu ne kahiadu zeragu ne deeri waguatas yawas ne di ronuso de onusosku ahundu ayewas dosa unka to ahuza hiotia kwaoni kahiadu yawas unkak tahuza u wanaktakwanzi ni hoyo da zerota ne etogati ona tik unkak ajun kihya zadarase nahadiri nirade di nizotu hedu ne yorahne Jesus onak dine nunkak ne runque ne skatke dinio di de yuntqua dawarie ne royahne Jesus dojodasawe ne zawadis sahaderi wanoda ne sahaderi wanota na de denekwa hestu di niore sadun ze de wadet gasun ne Jesus garunhyage niozare sokgik denihyase wahuwadinadu zozes nene barsabas ruanadunkwa nene justus di ruayanderi danune Matthias etotne wahundera naya sayahner ize agwegu zeniguraya deri gadi tagwanadunhas unka giga deniyase ne zeyadarahkwa ne ahoyota nahaderi wanodanti daza naktahkwa ne sitas ne tonue ne Nyehawenu zi nua to nakte etohne oaste wahuste wahadi wastotiu nunca giga denihyaze ahuwaya darago tanunene Matthias wahuwaya darago ne zazagoda ja daraze Zazagoja daraze me askant yaware ihadi radigue kuhne negi ne io rawan nagu. This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you very much, Samantha.
Excuse me for the nerves, you guys. It was a lot of verses on that one. Thank you so much for making me practice.
Well, and thank you for taking the time to join us and to say those words for us.
Much appreciated, Nyakoa.
All right, acknowledging the territory. I've said these words many, many times, but I say them again as if they were the first time I have these sacred words, so I think they're authentic words, and I feel them too. So acknowledging territory shows recognition and respect for Aboriginal peoples. It is recognition of their presence, both in the past and in the present. Recognition and respect are essential elements of establishing healthy reciprocal relations. These relationships are key to reconciliation. And so for thousands of years, Indigenous peoples have walked on this land. The relationship with the land is at the center of their lives and spirituality. May we live with respect on this land, united in peace and friendship as all its peoples. In order to promote mutual respect and understanding, we acknowledge that the present geographic bounds of the province of Quebec and of the Conseil régional Nakonha Regional Council of the United Church of Canada are located on the traditional territory of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Nations indigenous to Quebec and are Abenaki, Algonquin, Atikamekw, Cree, Huron-Wendat, Emu, Inuit, Maliseet, Mi'kmaq, the Canadian Chaka, the Mohawk, and the Naskapi. Virginia, I think it's time now to worship in this meeting. Thank you for that.
I'll share my PowerPoint. Okay. Eric, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
La prière du disciple joue un rôle essentiel dans la vie d'un croyant. En contribuant à sa croissance personnelle et spirituelle, par la prière, nous développons une relation plus profonde avec Dieu et nous nous alignons sur sa volonté.
Discipleship prayer strengthens our faith as we lay our burdens, fears, and worries before God. Here we find comfort, peace, and assurance amid life's challenges. As we regularly spend time in prayer, our faith grows and our trust in God deepens.
La prière du disciple fait partie intégrante du cheminement chrétien qui implique la recherche d'une connexion plus profonde avec Dieu et l'alignement de sa vie sur sa volonté. Elle va au-delà de la simple récitation de mots ou de demandes. Il s'agit plutôt d'une pratique qui cultive une relation étroite avec Jésus le Christ et permet aux croyants de lui rassembler davantage.
Discipleship prayer is a means through which disciples of Christ can grow in faith, knowledge, and accordance to his teaching. So long before we came to this moment, God has been at work and play, moving through the life of the Church of Canada and through the lives of the women and men who have dedicated their talents to this regional council. Through the movements of God's Spirit, both David Roger Gagnon and Judy Coffin have walked paths that have brought our region many years of dedicated service, being faithful to God's call. They have chosen different paths. David Roger will continue in service in the Atlantic region, where they will benefit from his continued dedication to God's call. While Judy's decision is to retire is a different path, God's Spirit will still be active through her in some way. We thank them for having shared their gifts with us and celebrate them both through tonight's worship as we focus tonight's worship on community and service.
Lecture du texte de Colossiens, chapitre 1, versets 9 et 10. Et pourquoi, depuis le jour où nous l'avons appris, nous ne cessons de prier pour vous. Nous demandons à Dieu de vous faire connaître pleinement sa volonté par l'Esprit, en toute sagesse et discernement. Ainsi, vous vous conduirez d'une façon digne du Seigneur, en faisant toujours ce qui lui plaît. Vous agirez en tout avec la plus grande bonté et vous progresserez dans la connaissance de Dieu.
We come before God to offer a prayer of thanks. The incredible sense of community, belonging, and unity within the church. As we are all different yet united in faith, we give thanks for the strength we find in our fellowship and the support we offer one another as we grow in our discipleship.
Créateur céleste, parent de nous tous, nous te prions et te remercions pour le don de la communauté. Nous sommes reconnaissants pour le soutien et l'encouragement que nous trouvons dans notre famille ecclésiale.
We thank you for the sense of belonging, our shared faith, for the way you use us to build each other up and bring us closer to you. We pray for continued strength and unity within our church family, so that we may stand firm in our discipleship and love one another. You loved us.
Aide-nous à toujours garder à l'esprit notre foi commune et à offrir à nos frères et sœurs le même soutien et les mêmes encouragements que ceux que nous espérons recevoir. Nous te rendons grâce, nous te louons et nous te prions de faire tout cela en ton saint nom. Amen.
Amen.
A reading from John. Whoever serves me must follow me. Where I am, there will be servants. There will be my servants. There will my servants be also. Whoever serves me, the Father will honor.
Nous honorons Jésus, l'exemple parfait du service, et nous prions pour avoir l'occasion de servir les autres dans l'amour comme il l'a fait pour ses disciples. Que nos cœurs soient remplis d'un esprit généreux qui désire être un instrument de grâce et d'amour pour ceux qui nous entourent.
Heavenly Creator, thank you for sending your Son, serve, show us how to live service life. Help us imitate his example of love and care for those around us, even in the most minor ways. May our actions be an expression of faith, passion, so that we may bless others.
Nous apprécions que tu nous donnes le discernement et la sagesse de reconnaître les occasions que tu nous donnes de servir. Que nos actions soient la preuve de notre engagement envers toi et un témoignage de ta grâce dans le monde. Aide-nous à faire preuve d'humilité et de gentillesse dans nos relations avec les autres afin que nous puissions les servir en esprit et en vérité.
Through service to others, we are blessed with the opportunity to be a reflection of Jesus' love. May we have the courage and strength to take up the challenge, to serve, to honor him, to be a blessing to those around us.
Remplis-nous de ta paix et de ta joie afin que nous puissions exprimer l'amour que tu as pour nous. Que nos paroles, nos pensées et nos actions soient motivées par notre désir de te servir et d'être un encouragement pour ceux qui nous entourent. Au nom de Jésus, nous te prions.
Wise and strong, and me most of all to know that my dear Lord loves me so. Praise to God, the fount of love, praise from morn to the set of sun, praise at home, praise in church, praise to God everywhere on earth. Dear Lord, lead me day by day, make me follow and obey. Your words of life, that your love ever abide. Praise to God, fount of love, praise from morn to the set of sun, praise at home, praise in church, praise to God everywhere on earth. Now with confidence I sing joyous praises to our God, and with upright heart I give tender care and sympathy. Praise to God, fount of love, praise from morn to the set of sun, praise at home, praise in church, praise to God everywhere on earth.
Well, thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Eric. All these words we have just heard are all so true. And all these gatherings are always a wonderful opportunity to both experience and express our gratitude to all who serve. And I'm particularly grateful to you, Judy, and à toi, David Roger. The work you've done for us has been enormous. And David Roger, I will miss you. I miss you already. And Judy, you will be sorely missed too. But again, from me and from all, thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessings on you both.
Merci beaucoup.
All right, the time has come to call this meeting to order. So in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, the only sovereign head of the church, and by the authority of the Conseil, régional, Nakonha Regional Council of the United Church of Canada, I hereby declare this general meeting duly constituted and to be in session for conducting the business which will properly come before it. So I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting. I believe we have some people for whom this is the first meeting. And it might be good if you raised your hand so we can recognize you as people for whom this is a first meeting and give a chance to the familiar to meet with the unfamiliar. So can I see any show of hands for those for whom this is the first meeting? There's Aaron. Welcome, Aaron. I seem to be the only one. All right. And some have been asking me what is the theme of this meeting, and the theme is expressed through the reading of the Acts 1, chapter 1, verses 15 to 26. And I'll make that quick. And one of the very first things, apparently, that the apostles do after the ascension of Jesus is to have a meeting and hold an election. This shows that when the regional council meets and elects, we are continuing the most ancient practice of the church meetings. And elections are not late additions to the ministry of the church. They are very much part of how we plan and carry out the mission that God has given us in partnership with the Holy Spirit. And so key elements of these, of course, is that the apostles come together to seek God's guidance in seeking a replacement, highlighting the importance of communal deliberations and prayers in making significant decisions. The need for leadership is emphasized, showing that continuity in governance was vital for the community's growth and mission. The apostles reference the scriptures concerning Judas, underscoring the belief that events in their journey were part of a divine plan, which reassures the community about God's sovereignty. And the method of casting lots signifies seeking divine will, illustrating the reliance in God's direction on crucial matters. Overall, this passage illustrates the early church's commitment to unity, responsible leadership, and reliance on divine wisdom as they navigate challenges. All right. Omnibus motions. Eric and Valerie, you
Yes.
have.
I'm pleased, Monsieur le Président, de présenter la motion omnibus pour débuter notre réunion. Alors, dans cette motion, il y a plusieurs éléments. Premièrement, que le Conseil régional Nakonha propose ce qui suit, que l'ordre du jour soit adopté tel que distribué, que le procès-verbal de l'Assemblée générale annuelle du printemps des 24 et 25 mai 2024 soit adopté tel que distribué, que les personnes suivantes agissent à titre des scrutateurs, Kent Chown, le pasteur, et Norm Haslam, que les personnes suivantes agissent à titre spécialiste des procédures parlementaires, Rosemary Lambie, qui est pasteur, ce soir, et Daryl McDonald, pasteur, demain matin. That the following people serve as chaplains, Marie-Claude Manga and Adedeji Sunday Akintayo. And that the following people serve as the equity support team, Reverend Rosemary Lambie, Lisa Beyer de Weaver, and Reverend Marie-Claude Manga. And that this meeting include the behavioral covenant. And as I read the behavioral covenant, I will be the one voice. I'm going to invite you, if you speak both languages, to simply respond using the same language that I have used. If you do not speak both languages, my recommendation is to turn your microphone off so that at least we have more or less a coherent voice, even if it's just a little bit off. So let us read responsively our behavioral covenant. Ensemble, appelés par le Christ, communauté, femmes et hommes de foi, meurtris autant qu'animés par l'espérance, aspirant à un service fidèle de Dieu, en ce temps de Dieu, apportant la diversité de nos dons.
Nous nous engageons à placer
Nous nous
Dieu
engageons à placer Dieu au centre de tout ce que nous faisons.
We confess that we have not always lived up to our vision of community. We need the Spirit to reorient us, to live an emerging faith, challenging us to live by grace rather than by entitlement.
We commit to be truthful in our communications, speaking for ourselves, speaking purposefully.
Nous sommes appelés à former une communauté dans la diversité où nos différences sont célébrées.
Ainsi, nous nous engageons
à honorer notre vision interculturelle
en accueillant les débats d'idées,
aménageant
de l'espace pour une participation équitable de tous et chacun, en favorisant la prise de parole des personnes silencieuses, en partageant le langage corporel, en écoutant avec attention et sans interruption, en séparant les problèmes.
We are called to be bold disciples.
as we lead
the call to discipleship, we will hold one another to account
when we
when
do
we
not
do not keep
commitment.
our commitments.
We will take a
future
future
orientation
orientation in our discussions and
imagination, demonstrate appreciation,
and honoring
honoring the decisions of the body.
Nous sommes appelés à un leadership porté par l'espérance d'un but et d'une vision, membre d'une communauté constituée et inspirée par Dieu, partenaire de Dieu pour prendre soin de la création.
Ainsi,
Nous
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 engageons à assurer la confidentialité des discussions
et
et à faire bon usage de notre temps.
Everyone together, we affirm
Affirm
we are
that all by God,
as disciples of Jesus to offer leadership to the United Church of Canada as it speaks to the evolving church of diverse ages, hopes, communities, united in deep spirituality, inspiring worship, daring justice.
Unis par une spiritualité profonde, créatrice. Oh.
Amen.
I would invite people to mute themselves, because if I mute everybody, I mute the translators, and that's awkward.
Just a reminder as well that as part of our holy manners, that when we use the chat feature of Zoom, that we understand that speaking in the public chat is the equivalent to speaking out loud in the middle of a meeting. And it's a little bit disruptive, and it can be a little rude, and should be directed to the chair of the meeting and used for points of order or matters of personal privilege. So when you're responding in chat, when you're invited to do so by the chair, that is also entirely a good use of the Zoom chat feature. And you use direct messaging when you need to engage with somebody else in the chat. So there is the opportunity to be able to do that. And the use of the transcription of this meeting is not for use outside of this meeting or event.
All right.
So,
Of course, I don't follow the chat, so.
Yeah, and yes, it's important to remember that the chair doesn't always see the chat. So, Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais proposer et Valerie Nixon appuie la motion que je viens de présenter.
All right. So, Kent, you're going to put up, is that one of the things when we have a vote?
Oh, yes, the famous vote. We did not talk about how to do the vote, but we'll just take this one nice and slow. Just 1 second, I'm going to clear some old results that are there. Okay, if people could go ahead and vote on the omnibus motion. Si tout le monde peut voter. And when we see voting has slowed down, Norm and I will let you know where things are. Okay. Everybody's had a chance to vote. So I'm going to read the results so that they're in the audio recording. And Norm can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just also checking, because sometimes there are people who just checking the chat, because sometimes there's people who vote once, but it's actually two people voting the same way. So we have 48 people in favor, and we have 3 abstentions for this. So the omnibus motion is passed.
Thank you, Kent. All right. All right. Okay, so I have a motion. We have a motion that for the reopening of the General Council's 45 commissioners vote. Do we have somebody to move that motion and second it?
Matt, can I just explain the motion?
Yep, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. They put you to do that. Yes, I'm sorry.
So the nominations team came together and had a conversation about the ballot for General Council commissioners, we have more candidates than we have spots at this time. So we will be proceeding later in this meeting to actually do an election of those commissioners for the General Council 45 meeting that begins next year. What this means is the executive had met and took a look at the proposal of the nominations committee and suggested that we keep the nominations open in case there was somebody who wished to put their name forward at this time. So in order to do so, because we had created a deadline prior to this, in order to do so, we would now ask that there be a motion that would reopen nominations and allow another moment for folks to be able to present themselves if they wish to be included in the ballot that we will be voting on tomorrow. So this is why this particular motion appears. We would need a mover and a seconder if in fact there is a willingness to reopen nominations at this time.
So Jan, you've raised your hand, and Jared, is that a question or is that because you're voting and you're voting?
I have a question. If we open the nominations, should we also specify when we close the nominations?
I can clarify that by saying that if we open nominations, we will proceed immediately to people being able to be nominated, and we will close it shortly thereafter. So this is a one-shot deal.
So Jan, are you moving that motion?
I'm
or is that a
moving
question?
that motion.
All right. And Barbara, are you seconding that motion or is that a question?
No, that I'm willing to second.
All right. Marie-Claude, is that a seconding or a question? Marie-Claude, t'as la main.
Oui, c'est une question.
Oui, j'écoute.
J'y vais?
Oui, vas-y.
J'ai la permission de parler?
Oui, Marie-Claude, oui, vas-y.
OK. Président, est-ce que si il y a déjà quelqu'un qui a discerné pour un nom, est-ce qu'on peut le faire maintenant ou bien on doit attendre qu'il y ait encore du temps pour avoir d'autres candidats?
Si on adopte cette motion, l'idée c'est de passer tout de suite à ouvrir la possibilité des nominations, mais on ne peut pas retarder trop longtemps parce qu'il faut aller chercher la biographie de cette personne-là, l'afficher, le préparer, tout ça. Alors, le comité de nomination a décidé qu'il allait ouvrir, mais que ça allait être ouvert uniquement après cette motion et on allait fermer les nominations tout de suite après.
Ah, OK, d'accord. Merci.
C'est juste une question de timing surtout.
D'accord.
Okay, so the motion has been moved and seconded. Ken, can you put up the vote?
So for the record, Monsieur le Président, nous avons 41 sur 54 en faveur et nous avons 11 personnes contre et nous avons 2 abstentions.
So the motion is carried. All right. Eric,
let me just explain then what we're going to do now. So we will open the period for nominations. Mark, as the president, will formally do that. What will then happen is after the period of nominations closes, we will present to you what the ballot will look like at the end of tonight's session. You will see what the ballot looks like, and you will see who is on the ballot in both the lay and ordered categories. There are 5 positions in each category. And so we are seeking a balance of both lay and ordered delegates or commissioners for the General Council. Then tomorrow, we will then proceed to having a vote on those candidates. When we vote, you'll be given the opportunity to vote up to five names in each category. You can choose to only vote for 1 or 2, but you cannot vote for more than 5. And what will happen then is the votes will be tallied, and those who receive the 5 top vote receiving people will become commissioners to the General Council. And those who are not in the top 5 will become alternates to the upcoming General Council meeting, which means that they will be taken in the order in which they received votes. What that means is if one of the 5 people can't serve, we can then move and somebody can then replace them, and we'll take the next name on the basis of the number of votes received. Does that process make sense for folks? We just want to be absolutely sure that everyone understands what is about to happen. Okay. And so, Mark, I turn it over to you for the opening of nominations. Of additional nominations, to be clear.
Right.
We don't. If you've been nominated, you don't need to be nominated a second time.
No, that's it. So are there, from the floor, are there any nominations, any nominees? I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. And then if no names are come forward, then that will be end of that process. Marie-Claude, oui, t'as une question? Ou tu veux nommer quelqu'un?
Je vais être sûr, Président, est-ce que ces candidats comme modérateur, modératrice?
On n'est pas là encore. Plus tard.
Plus tard, OK. D'accord.
So I gather we have no nominees. So I will close nominations as of now. All right, then moving on to our nominations for the moderator. So Eric, will you tell us about that?
So we, as a regional council, we are entitled to nominate as many moderatorial nominees as we wish. And so those are folks who would be considered at the General Council meeting as possible candidates or as possible people who could become moderator of the United Church of Canada. This process is now what is understood to be common. So regional councils do nominate folks. People can also be nominated by the executive of the regional council. So this isn't the last opportunity for you to be considering candidacy or to add somebody else's name to the nomination list. It can go to the executive. Likewise, 2 commissioners, so any of the commissioners that we elect, can also nominate moderatorial nominees. So all of that's possible. But I understand, Mr. President, that we do have a nominee to receive, and I think we may have a nominator and seconder in the room.
But first, so do we have it? We reopen nominations. Do we have somebody to move and second that? And then after that, we can have questions. So can I see who will we need to move that motion? So Virginia, you're moving, yes. And can I have someone to second that motion? Lisa, you're seconding that motion. So okay, so moved by Virginia, seconded by Lisa. Any questions? Okay, then I'll call the vote. Kent, will you put that up?
So, excuse me, Mr. President, the votes are 53 out of 56, 54 out of 57, sorry, in favor. There are 2 votes against reopening, and there is 1 abstention.
So the motion is carried. Now, Eric, will you continue with the forthcoming?
Sure. I think at this point we seek whether there are nominees. And so if you are willing to nominate somebody, this is the time to do so. Si vous voulez mettre quelqu'un, nommer quelqu'un comme candidat au poste de modérateur, c'est maintenant le temps de le faire.
All right, so I'll give you a few seconds to consider that idea of submitting somebody's name. Linda, your hand is raised. And Marie-Claude, Linda, what are you?
Although I'm concerned that maybe I didn't read this at some point, but I'd like to nominate the Reverend Dr. Samuel Vauvert Dansereau.
All right, thank you. Marie-Claude?
C'est l'esprit qui parle. Je vais nommer aussi le même candidat.
Même candidat.
Alors,
Le pasteur Samuel.
on peut accepter, Marie-Claude, ça comme l'appui qui est nécessaire pour seconder. Alors, merci.
Oui, merci.
So again, are there other nominees? The second time? And the third call for nominees? All right, so we have, yes.
A reminder that this is not the final opportunity, but we can formally do that now.
Right. So Samuel Vauvert Dansereau, so we have, who is moving and seconding that motion? I believe we already had
Linda and Marie-Claude have moved and seconded. And now we would turn to Samuel to see if he would accept the nomination.
The nominations.
Par la grâce de Dieu, dans l'humilité, je suis prêt, inéni, comme dit l'Écriture. Here I am, wanting to be your servant, if that's your will.
All right, then are there any questions before I call the vote? All right, Kent, will you put up the vote? Kent, I don't think you have to give the numbers, just...
Okay, it's a landslide in favor.
So the motion is carried.
Very strongly.
Samuel, merci beaucoup. Vous êtes un fidèle et un bon serviteur.
Merci, Président. Pour le record, est-ce qu'on peut dire que je me suis abstenu de ce vote? S'il vous plaît.
Parfait. Et tu veux que ça soit noté au procès verbal que tu t'es abstenu?
Oui, je pense que ce n'est pas décent que je vote pour moi, mais Dieu est bon. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde. Je suis très ému.
Nous aussi, Samuel, on est ému. All right. I believe the time has come now to talk. If this done, Eric, on that, we move on to the equity question. So, Rosemary, will you talk to us about equity?
All right, just to unmute. Yes, so I believe there is a slide. I hope there is. It's called Equity Aspirations
But once upon a time, when we sat in table groups, we all knew who was around us, and we had opportunities to bump elbows or whisper across the table group. We could see who was up at the microphone speaking. We had a clear sense of who was there. Now that we're having these Zoom meetings, it's much harder for all of us. It's very hard for the chair to chair the meeting, because to try to have a sense of the room when you can't see the people or you've only got a few faces on your screen, and for all of us, it's the same. I was thinking of that during worship. We're so used to being up on our feet and doing it, and it's hard. So equity is finding the new way of how to be equitable and caring and listening in new ways to what are the questions being asked, what are the biases of the questions being asked, what are the assumptions that we may be hearing, or what are the assumptions that we're bringing to the meeting, and we don't have anybody to bounce them off unless we shoot off a private chat to someone and see if they're feeling the same way we are. But it's not the same as being in table groups. One of the things we're being asked to aspire to be equitable about is notice who's missing. Well, that's really hard in a Zoom meeting. Who is missing? I know that even when we do the hybrid meetings, the people on the screen know who's on the screen, and the people in the room know who's in the room. So we found that at Wesley last spring, but I was in the room. I knew who was there. I had no idea who was on the screen. And so it's still, it's a struggle of how we be together when we're meeting this way. How do we value all the voices and not just the people who we like to talk to? When you're put in table groups, you talk to the people at your table. They're not necessarily all your best buddies. And so you may speak the same language. We have English, we have the French, we have the bilingual tables, which give opportunities. But there are actually 10 different languages in this regional council. So it's not often that we get to hear Italian or Armenian or Hungarian in our table groups, but they are our voices too. We heard Samantha reading in Mohawk, and I don't think any of the rest of us would take on that challenge, but those are our voices too. How do we live out our commitment to be equitable to all the faces, all the names, all the languages, as we strive to be a faithful regional council? And so that's what we're aspiring to, and we need to find ways, thank you, of how do we do that? And there is going to be a sondage, a questionnaire that, Kent, I think you have that one too. Marie-Claude is going to explain it in French. This is coming from the General Council former meeting, but we're going to ask all of you to think about these aspirations as we go through the next 2 days, and then to fill in the questions which you're about to see, and how do we feel about how we've done, how others have done, and how can we do it better? Okay.
I'm afraid I don't have another slide. This is the only one I received this evening.
Okay, so all right, then at some point you will get the questions. They are available in both languages, and I think there are 6 questions on the sheet, but it's basically asking you to grade from poor to very good. How did we do? How did I do personally, and how do you feel we did as a regional council in terms of listening for biases, listening for assumptions, noticing who's missing, hearing everyone's voices, treating people equitably, and living out our commitment to be the best of ourselves as we live out the scriptures that we heard and live out the, what are the holy manners called now? Anyway, I like the new version, but as we live to that. Okay.
Our behavioral covenant, yes.
Thank you, yeah. So this is your equity team for this weekend, Marie-Claude Manga, myself, and Lisa Beyer de Weaver, and we have emails and we have phone numbers, and would be happy to, if you don't feel like having a private chat, you can pick up the phone and talk to one of us. Dans la langue de votre choix. Okay, Judy said she'll email the equity question to you all tonight so that you have a chance to, and please do fill, it's anonymous, but that's fine. because we need you to be honest about how we're doing. We're really striving to live into this new reality, and it's got lots of challenges that we've never had before when we sat around the table. We sang sitting around the table, but we're not doing that. So we're trying to do it virtually.
And that certainly applies to me too. So I quite agree.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't know if Marie-Claude or Lisa want to add anything. I think I took up their part because we don't have the questions, but you will get the questionnaire sent out. So watch your emails and.
Oh, Marie-Claude, veux-tu dire quelques mots?
Rosemary, I think you did a great job.
Okay.
Nothing to add.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So you've got our chaplains?
Yes, now our chaplains. Are there any questions? Est-ce qu'il y a des questions?
I will be copying the contact information into the chat so that you'll have access to it later on.
I don't get to see many people, and the way this is. All right. Eric, will you talk to us about what we meant by emerging issues?
So if folks, we've often noticed that at these meetings that folks will identify issues that are emerging. Back in my political days, we'd call these emergency resolutions. So they, if there are issues that you feel we should contribute some time to tomorrow, we have a little bit of time, a short section of time available for that. And if so, please send anything that you'd like to raise in that time before 9 o'clock to me by email, and I will put down my email address in the chat. That's it.
Right. Tom, we've invited Tom to talk to us about the focus group research report. So where is Tom?
I'm here. I hope everybody can see me. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yes, I can hear you, Tom.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Bonsoir tout le monde. I believe you, Eric or Judy, you'll have the deck shown. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Kent's going to show it for you.
All right. Perfect. So just before we begin, let me very quickly introduce myself. I don't know most of you on the call. Some of you I've seen, some of you I haven't. So my name is Tom. I am one of the partners, one of the owners at Callison Marketing Research, a research firm based in Montreal, but I live in Toronto. So what we do at Callison is all forms of what we call consumer research. The majority of our work is sort of for-profit large companies, but we do have a pretty good experience in non-profit sectors. I myself have worked in, let's call it the religious sector before, worked a lot with unions. And so I wouldn't say this to my other clients, but quite frankly, this kind of work is the most interesting work that we do. You know, it's one thing to know why people buy the insurance that they do, but it's another to know what they think of religion and what they think of the country and all of these very, very interesting topics. So we were very pleased to get the opportunity to work with you again. This time, what we did was a study that was focused on the province of Quebec. The report is in French. All of the work was done in French. I myself speak French, but I believe there's a translator, someone translating my voice. If anybody wants to ask a question in French, if anybody wants me to repeat something in French, please let me know. I'm perfectly happy to do both. So I will proceed in English unless told otherwise. And for the tech team, I'll just tell you when to advance. You can go ahead and advance. And one more slide, please. Okay, so let me stop here and just give you a little bit more context as to what this study was all about. So within our studies, we do quantitative studies, which you will know as surveys mostly, lots of data. Those things are great for having data and indications of what the stats are saying. There's a whole other world of research called qualitative research, which is typically done through interviews or focus groups. In this case, what we did were focus groups. The benefit of focus groups is that you get to have these long, drawn-out conversations with people, 2 hours worth, where they can expand on their ideas, give you lots of details, give you examples and anecdotes, and they really provide a sort of a richer sense of feedback. So in this case, because we had such an important question, such a deep question, which were primarily, why are you not attending church, or why are you not more involved in church life? What are the obstacles that you're facing, and what type of messaging might encourage you to sort of come to church or to be part of the church? Because those are such high level, big questions, we wanted to do it through a qualitative measure. So that's what we did. And like I just mentioned, the three main questions that were driving this research was how do Francophone Quebecers who are spiritual, aka not atheists, how do they feel towards the church and the idea of going to church or being part of the church? Again, what are the obstacles that are preventing them from doing so? And lastly, what are some of the messaging or some of the ideas that could maybe get them to frequent the church or be part of the church to a greater degree? So those were our marching orders, and what we construed in terms of a research plan was, as I said, 4 focus groups. We did 3 with what we called multi-generational Quebecers. These were Quebecers who were born in Quebec, their parents were born in Quebec, so the history of their life is in Quebec. We then added 1 group, which were people who were either immigrants themselves, i.e. they were the first generation here, or their parents were immigrants from another country. And so they had a little bit different history and therefore hopefully different perspectives as well. So we did 4 groups in Quebec. We did this actually back in May, so it was quite a while ago, but nonetheless this year. Some of the criteria that we impose, whenever we impose criteria, we try to make it so that everybody's feedback will be relevant without biasing any of the groups. So in this case, we had people who were 18 to 45 on the younger side, right? Because we obviously want to look towards the future and see what kind of ideas they have. Sorry, tech team, if you can just bring that up full screen again. Obviously, they had to be people who weren't frequenting church or going to church regularly, right? That was the whole point, to figure out why that was. We excluded people who were atheists, right? What we try to do is we try to make sure the conversation, as I said, is at least relevant. So if someone says, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in anything after this life, they're not going to bring a lot to the table. So we wanted to exclude people who were sort of out and out decided that obviously there was no God. So we want people to at least be somewhat open-minded towards the idea. And we also excluded people who were already part of a different faith that would really almost make it impossible for them to go to UCC churches. For example, people who were religiously or culturally Jewish, Muslim, or any other kind of mainstream religion that was obviously different than Christianity or Catholicism. Okay, so that's who we spoke to. We spoke to about 27 people, so they're not large samples, but the conversations are deep. We can skip this slide.
Next one, Kent.
Great, and so we'll go straight to the results. Anybody listening in French, you're okay? You can still hear me? No questions that you need me to address? I will take the silence as an indicator that all is good. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to walk you through these slides. I don't expect you to read what's on the slide. This is part of a report that you have, perhaps it's been sent to you in advance. What I'm going to do is just touch on the subject of the slide and explain kind of what we heard, okay? So one of the first things that we asked these people, who again were not really active participants in the church, is what sort of experience they have with church or church life, right? We want to know if they're starting from 0 or do they have experience. You'll see the number 26 out of 27. That is a number of people who grew up with experience as part of a church life, right? So in other words, almost everybody had grown up with the church, which was really interesting because it means they're making a conscious decision based on their experiences, not that they've never been introduced to it, okay? So really what it was people who had grown up with that experience and basically at this point no longer do it. And almost immediately in the groups, we saw a divide. The multi-generational Quebecers, the people whose parents were from Quebec, they grew up in Quebec, they made a decision, basically, I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, it was really a breakup with the church, if you will. The first generation or the immigrant group weren't attending church now, but it was much more often due to logistical factors. I don't know where the closest church is towards me. I don't know if they're the same kind of vibe or the same kind of experiences that I've had back home. I don't necessarily have the time because I'm here. I'm just starting my life here, and I'm trying to get used to things. So it was a very different perspective. One was a breakup. One was, hang on, let me try and figure things out, and then I'll go to it. Right. So in my world, whenever we're advising clients, I'm sure you've heard this before from consultants, we love to talk about the low-hanging fruit. It's a very popular expression. We love to profile the low-hanging fruit and tell you who the low-hanging fruit is and how to get the low-hanging fruit. Based on our experience, and I'm going to repeat this for the next hour, the first generation / immigrant group were the low-hanging fruit. They were far more receptive towards church in general, being part of a church. The reasons were logistical as opposed to really sort of profound breakup, the way we saw with Quebecers. So it was evident from the beginning, and I'll repeat it throughout the session here tonight. But even in terms of the reasons why they weren't going to church, like I said, the low-hanging fruit were much more easier to overcome than the other group. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we asked people to define their faith or their belief right now. We had 3 levels. We had people who were mostly neutral, right? I'm not going to say I'm an atheist, but there could be nothing, there could be something, I really don't know. Then we had this group in the middle who believed in a higher power in a sort of a non-religious sense, right? So that they said, I believe in karma, I believe in spirituality, but they really stopped at the doorstep of saying God. Then you had the third group, which the immigrant group was almost entirely comprised of, which is, I very much believe in God. And as I said, the difference for that group is not a lessened belief, it's rather logistical issues. Whereas with the Quebecers, there was much more reticence to even admit that they believed in God per se. So again, coming at this same subject from 2 very different perspectives. Next slide, please. Okay. So given their conversation, given that they were talking about, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, we wanted to break that down and say, okay, exactly what do you mean by religious and spirituality? And basically what we found is that for these Quebecers, particularly the multi-generationals, Catholicism and religion are tandem. They're almost one and the same. So when they think about religion, they think about the Catholic religion, which of course is what they've been experienced. And their associations, quite frankly, are not very positive. There's a real sense of control, restriction, rules, customs. You either do this or you're out. This is the way we do things. You say the words that we tell you to say, you sit when we tell you to sit, you stand when we tell you to stand, etc. And that's just not appealing to them, not at their age. All these people were in their 30s, late 20s, maybe 40s. And they were saying, at this age, I don't need that in my life. I feel like I can practice my spirituality in other ways. I don't need someone to tell me how to do it. And so there's sort of this rejection of the control or of what we would call the dogma. Contrary to that was, well, okay, if that's what religion is for you, what is spirituality? And it was sort of diametrically opposed. It was open-minded, personal, welcoming. You can practice it any way you want, wherever you want, when you want, how you want. And you could see that what they were attracted to was, as I said, the complete opposite of what they associate with religion. So they are breaking away from not just religion, they're breaking away from the control of religion, the restrictions of religion, and much more inclined towards this liberal spiritual ideology. Next slide, please. Okay, so we asked them to define church as well. It was really quite similar. So this is a word cloud that was based on the number of answers that we received during the groups. The size of the font indicates the frequency with which it was mentioned. So basically, when we said church, they said Catholic. Right. So as I mentioned earlier, all of their perceptions of church are essentially the same as their perceptions of Catholicism. Things they talked about, the bâtiment physique, so the churches themselves, the artifacts inside, sort of the cultural side of churches, life events, marriages, baptisms, tradition and history, also abuses, power, riches. You know, there's blue is positive, gray is negative here. So you'll see there's just about as much negative associated with church as there is positive. This was really driven by the multi-generational Quebecers. So it's I would say church for them / religion is starting from a difficult place, right? When we're counseling clients, we talk a lot about changing brand perceptions. Most of our clients, by the time they reach us, that's what they're trying to do for whatever reason. And it is a difficult thing to do, right? And so what we've seen in our sessions is that there are certainly some brand perceptions to change. The UCC, the United Church, is obviously different than the Catholic Church, but in their mind, you know, church is church. So as a starting point, it would be, in our opinion, very necessary to sort of say, you know, we are different. We don't work the same way, because in their mind, you are probably the same as the Catholic religion, which is very restrictive. Okay, next slide, please. We looked at communities of faith just to see how they were defining that. You know, throughout this exercise, we're trying to see is there a right term to use. Community of faith is probably one of those terms, because it doesn't necessarily tie directly to religion. Religion is part of it, but so are, you know, organized groups, so are sects. It's a little bit more broad than religion or church, which again in their mind is very closely associated with Catholicism. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so nonetheless, we obviously know they are not frequent participants in church life, but we asked them, what do you see as the benefit of churches? Obviously, they all exist. So why do you think they exist? What do you think they bring? What they really talked a lot about was community support. And this is where they started to have these conversations of sort of saying, sorry, was there a question? No. Okay. They were sort of starting to talk about more of the ideal churches as almost community centers, secular in their opinion, right? Which is going to be a whole conversation that we can talk about later. You know, how secular do you want to be? Because they want lots of secularity, if that's a word, but as much as possible, right? That they're saying that what churches do for the community is very honorable and very important. They are meeting places, particularly for people who maybe are getting new to the city or don't have a big social network yet. They can help people who are in need, whether they're arrivals or whether they've lived here a long time. They can help them emotionally, they can help them potentially financially or you know, with food and job opportunities. And then, you know, some people were saying a lot of people can't afford to see psychologists, for example. So, you know, you can meet with a priest or the minister and maybe even have sort of essentially free therapy sessions. So the whole aspect of support is something that, despite their negative perceptions, is still very much ingrained with churches and church life. So these are really positive things that you and other churches will have credibility delivering. Then the more important question was the barriers. Okay. As I said, we divided their barriers into 3 levels. So primary barriers in blue, secondary barriers, and tertiary barriers. I would say that the primary barriers were driven by the multi-generational, and the secondary barriers were mentioned more by the first generation immigrant group. So primary barriers, values that don't speak to me anymore, the church being too dogmatic, too controlling, and unnecessary in their opinion. The secondary barriers, those that were mentioned primarily by the first generation group, was things like scheduling, not knowing, you know, where to be or not knowing how to reach them, not being present enough in the community, so not knowing about them. You know, like I said earlier, more logistical things, as opposed to I don't correspond to these values, which is a much more entrenched issue. Okay, next slide, please. So we were asking them, based on all this, what would be some of your reasons to go to church, right? Or what could some of the things that churches do to encourage you? The first one was being able to have an impact on my community. So a lot of these people, even though they weren't necessarily religious people, they wanted to volunteer, they wanted to help their community, they wanted to help people in their community. And so they sort of see church as a good conduit by which they could do that. You know, it's an easy way to get involved in the community. The other suggestion was that if the church was to modernize, be a little less controlling, be a little more open-minded, that would be more encouraging to them, right? So I guess if you want to look at this half full, this glass, you could argue that what they want is much more akin to what the UCC offers than perhaps what other churches offer, right? So there's at least a commonality between what they're hoping for and what's inherent in your church. So I think that's a good positive starting point as well. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We also presented them with a series because they said, you know, they want the church to be involved in the community and that this was a way they could help their community. We wanted to get a little bit more specific. And so we presented them with a long list of initiatives and asked them to sort of rank the top 3 or the top 5 that would be most important to them. Okay, and so that's what you see ranking here. So 22 out of the 27 people ranked in their top scores, basically dealing with food insecurity, right? This is obviously a very timely thing given what's happened to grocery prices. So for their own sake, as well as the sake of other people in their community, they sort of see this as a very important initiative to get behind. Anti-poverty activities as well, very important. They were sort of one of the same with the food insecurity, but helping the less fortunate was something that they regard as very important as well. And thirdly, you know, interesting, as I said, there's a long list here, so this could have ranked anywhere, was anti-racist activities. Now, most, if not all of the people in the immigrant group were from a visible minority, right? But that was only 7 people. So the other 5 who tipped this to become the third most important factor were white Quebecers, right? Allies, if you will. In other words, it wasn't just the immigrant group that made this initiative as important. It was people who were not necessarily part of a visible minority, but who was important to help nonetheless. So that was number 3. So very interesting to see it ranked so highly. I think we could all agree, very encouraging to see it ranked so highly. But all of this to say that, you know, when you promote the kind of causes that you're helping with, if you want to sort of strike a chord with these Quebecers, those 3 would probably be the best ones to prioritize. Okay, this next section is going to be very short. We were going to ask them a series of questions about the United Church of Canada, and we had a little bit of a snafu, which was only one person in the 27 had ever heard of the United Church of Canada. Okay, so you can go back a bit. So this, I mean, you can't understate the importance of this, right? I mean, we can come up with all the best strategies we want. We can recognize that the United Church is very modern and very different, but at the end of the day, almost everybody in the group had never heard about you, and that you were totally new to them. So new, in fact, that some were saying, you know, who is this church? You know, they were almost a little bit leery, right? Like, is this some new kind of church that's just a startup, and what are they all about? You know, and then obviously we're shocked when we talked about the history of the church and how long you've been around and how big you are. It was this massive secret to them. And in their world, it's very important, that kind of history and that kind of legacy. So like I said, the conversation kind of stopped there with respect to the United Church, but it's a very, very telling result that I think, in addition to all of the good brainstorming that you'll do, has to be improved over time. Okay. We also tested 3 slogans. So these were slogans that were prepared by people on your end and were designed to sort of say, you know, if we are going to introduce ourselves to you, what's the best way to put our foot forward? So there was 3. I will translate them for you. So the first one, une église ouverte, moderne et inclusive, ça existe. A open or an open-minded church, modern and inclusive, yes, it exists, basically. Number 2, une église sans dogme, c'est possible, venez creuser la foi chrétienne à votre manière avec nous. A church without dogma, yes, it's possible. Come basically practice Christianity in the way that you want with us. And then lastly, une place pour se sentir accueilli tel que nous sommes, a place to be welcomed as we are. Okay. We'll skip over the next 3 slides and we'll go straight to the comparison slide. This one here. Okay. So those were the 3. They were able to select the ones that spoke the most to them. And what's really interesting here is, I'll start with the one on the bottom. 0 out of 27 people picked that one. Okay, so that's where une église sans dogme. The problem with this one really came down to one word, which was dogma or dogma. This sent everybody in kind of funny ways. Some people didn't understand what it meant literally, and so they said, well, you're without this thing, I don't know what that is. Right, so they were out. Some people found it impossible to believe, quite frankly. And so it seemed like way too stretched. In their mind, they had grown up with such a dogmatic church that they couldn't believe it, basically. So they were out. And then some people thought it was just sort of a harsh word, essentially, and just kind of preferred not to use it. So it might have worked better if there had been an alternative word for dogma, but that one word sort of sunk it. So we'll move to the other 2. The difference between these 2, both were popular overall. So you see 14 chose the top one and 13 chose the second one, right? So on that basis, you might conclude that they're the same. But what we did was we split the groups, we split the votes by the type of participant that they were. Multi-generational, they were born in Quebec, parents were born in Quebec, versus new immigrants. And so you'll see that the first option, une église ouverte, moderne, inclusive, ça existe, that was only chosen by multi-generational. Not one of the immigrants chose that one, right? So it was very polarizing in that sense. The second option was chosen by less multi-generationals, but it was chosen by the new immigrants. So in that sense, it at least appeals to members of both groups, right? Which, if you want to cast as big a impact as possible, you know, that's the kind of approach you want to have. And you could argue that even though the first one, you know, if you want to have a more narrow focus and really hit home with them, it's not hitting home with the group that I think is the right group to hit home with. So between the 2 of these 3 options, our recommendation is the second one, une place pour se sentir accueilli tel que nous sommes. And the reason why that scored really well with immigrants was they could really get behind the sense of being welcomed. As I mentioned, either they were new themselves or their parents were new. So this idea of being welcomed was more appealing to them than having a modern church, because they kind of like church the way it was back home. A lot of them, by the way, were from Haiti or French Africa. And so they didn't need to necessarily see something very different, but they wanted to feel welcomed in there. And so that's kind of why it appealed to them. Okay.
Great, Tom. Can I ask you to speed things up a little bit? We're following
Yes,
schedule.
sure, no problem. Okay. Keep going. Next one. Okay. The last thing we did, because so few people knew about the Church of Canada, we tested some facts about your church just to see what struck them. Almost all of these they were astounded by, right? Because they had never heard of you and they figured you were kind of brand new. But the thing that spoke the most to them was this first one on top, which is talking about the amount of money you've invested to whatever you want to call it, support or right some of the issues in the past with the Indigenous First Nations communities. So it was not just the fact that you wanted to do it was the fact that you'd really put your money where your mouth was, essentially. They really respected that. Secondly, the fact the ministers don't have to be celibate was important to them, because it shows that you are fundamentally different than the Catholic Church. That was one thing they could say, okay, well, if that's how you do it, then obviously you're very different. And then thirdly, was a few were tied here, but it was the proportion of women who were ministers, for the women in the group, but also for the guys in the group, to see, again, this sense that there is obviously something very different about the United Church compared to what they had become accustomed to. Okay, let's move on. We can skip this section. It was nothing too important, and I'll go straight to conclusions. Okay, so 5 conclusions to go over with you. The first one, there's a heavy weight to church in Quebec, all led by their experience with the Catholic Church. A lot of their associations of these groups are negative, and they want to basically get as far away from that kind of experience as possible. Conclusion number 2, United Church, despite all of the great things about you, it's all for naught if they haven't heard about you. And right now, only 1 out of 27 has heard about you. So there's a big awareness campaign that will have to come, because otherwise, obviously, like I said, these great things that you're doing just will go unknown. 3, 1 province, 2 very distinct groups, 2 very distinct targets, I should say. One that is far lower hanging than the other, which would be the immigrants or new arrivals to Quebec. They don't have the same baggage with church. They are much more open-minded, and their only reasons for not being part of it right now are logistical as opposed to reception-based. So of the 2, much easier group, I would argue. Conclusion 4. So very much appreciative of the social justice initiatives that these communities or that your church is involved with. The multi-generationals want a secular experience mostly. They want essentially a new version of a community center, which obviously begs a question for you, right? If you're not going to be as dogmatic as the Catholic Church, that's a good thing. But how far towards that secular experience do you go? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to completely give up your identity either, right? And so that question of where to be on that spectrum is obviously only one you can answer, but it's a very important question to answer, because what they have right now with the Catholic Church is far too religious for them. And then, as I said at the start, one message, the message that resonates the most with both groups is a place to feel welcomed exactly as we are, or exactly as you are. So that is the one that really connects with the new immigrant group and some of the multi-generational group as well. So that was the best option. Okay, so last slide. So what is the ideal church in their mind? It's a open-minded, liberal practice as you think is best. We are here to support you and support the community. We're not here to tell you what to do or how to do it. We are involved not just in things that affect members' lives, we're involved in the community. We are very open-minded towards all groups, and basically we are this new modern approach that is arguably more liberal and less restrictive than what you have come to know. And we are very different than your experience in the past. Okay. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
So yes, we'll be breaking up into breakout rooms in a few minutes. But in the meantime, yes, people have a chance to talk to you and ask you a few questions. Now's the time to do it. Any questions for Tom? Yes, Jan.
Well, I found this very interesting. I found it also a little, it left a question in my mind about what about the Anglophones of Quebec, who might not have had the same negative response because they might not necessarily have grown up in a Catholic church. Many have, but not all. And I wondered why there was no, was it a choice that was made not to look at any Anglophones at all in this survey? And would that be something that would be helpful to us in the future?
Sure, so I'll answer that. So what we don't want to do is ever mix languages in the same group, right? So the focus for this phase, let's call it phase 1, was Francophone Quebecers, right? Who I understand are perhaps the group that you're having the most difficulty with. So we had 4 groups, most of them were French, so we had 50 groups in French. We did not layer on any Anglophone groups. This is an expensive process, so there's some budget considerations as well. But in the future, certainly that's an option to look at as well, and to get their perspective and see if it's the same as the Francophones or different.
And I can just add maybe that that I know the United Church of Canada is looking at doing this same process in English as well nationally. So there will be some information probably coming forward on the English side eventually as well.
Anyone else have a question for Tom? On this? All right then. Well, Tom, thank you
Maybe-
very much. Yes.
Can I just
Vicky.
add? I'll just add one quick thing. Having sat through all of 4 focus groups myself, one of the things that was quite remarkable was that because we didn't tell people that we were in the United Church until we started to sort of show them the facts of the church. I think what was interesting is that they were shocked that such a church could exist, and that even that one person who said that they knew the United Church was like vague, was like, I think I've heard of that title before, but I'm not sure. So there is a really interesting, I mean, we had people outright laugh at us when we said that there could be a church that was open and flexible. It was quite interesting to hear the laughter that came from people who had never heard of the church before. So anyway, just a few other sort of little pieces that really struck me in the process.
6 months later, it still sticks with you, Eric.
Natasha.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to just comment about asking a question and not hearing anything. It's just like a high school class. My question is linked to asking people if they've gone through personal experiences with death or crises or trauma that would perhaps lead them to be needing to search for meaning more. Was there any hint of going in that route?
Not in this one. It's a little bit more challenging to ask people that in a focus group environment, because obviously they're surrounded by 6 other people. But I do remember we looked at that in previous quantitative research, not in Quebec, but more in on English Canada. We had that same comparison, but we didn't get too much into it. The event that people were using most as a reason to attend church was baptisms and marriages. So it was more the positive than the negative. I don't recall anyone volunteering, crises that took them to church or away from church.
I think there was some mention of funerals too, but
yeah, mind you, they were 45 at most, so they're not quite at that point yet.
Okay, thank you. Jean-Philippe.
Bonjour Tom.
Bonjour.
Alors, ma question, elle vient en fait de quelque chose que vous avez dit plus tôt par rapport au langage. Alors, comme vous le savez peut-être, comme moi, la plupart des gens de 18 à 35 ans n'ont pas eu d'expérience d'église en tant que telle. Donc, ils parlent plutôt d'une expérience qu'ils ont entendu parler. Alors, est-ce que vous sentez qu'à quelque part, la difficulté d'entrer en relation avec ces gens-là, il n'y a pas une grosse, il n'y a pas, je veux dire, un problème au niveau du langage en lui-même et de la manière qu'on se présente? Ou est-ce qu'on utilise un langage qui est justement peut-être plus adapté et les gens ne connaissent plus
Je pense qu'il y a 2 questions là-dedans. Premièrement, est-ce qu'ils ont une expérience avec l'Église? Puis, contrairement à ce que vous disiez, dans le fond, la plupart ont eu des expériences. Ils ont vécu ça quand ils étaient jeunes avec leurs parents ou avec leurs grands-parents. Fait qu'il y a 26 sur 27 qui ont vécu une période dans leur vie où ils ont passé assez de temps dans l'Église. Fait que ça venait pas nécessairement des perceptions, mais ça venait, leur perception venait de l'expérience. Ça, c'est partie 1. Partie 2, en termes de langage, je pense que le langage est hyper important. On a vu dans la phrase tantôt que juste le mot dogme, ça les a envoyés à côté, tu sais. Puis, eux autres, quand ils pensent à religion, l'Église catholique, c'est quasiment la même affaire. Fait qu'il faut, je pense, partir avec le langage qui est complètement à l'opposé de ce qui s'attend de l'Église, entre autres, moderne, ouverte, inclusif, plus libre, libéral, mettons. parce que je pense que ça va avoir un impact sur eux dans le sens où ils disent, wow, c'est pas à ça que je m'attendais, tu sais.
Merci beaucoup, Tom. En effet, c'est une réponse tout à fait légitime. Et pour le terme dogme, voyez-vous, pour faire très court, on n'a pas tous la même définition, même en Église. Alors, il y a ça aussi à réfléchir. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Jean-Philippe. Monique, and then John.
Deux choses. Merci beaucoup de cette présentation. Ce qui m'a frappé dans un des premières images, c'est que les groupes avaient répondu à diverses questions en soulignant des activités pour les enfants. Donc, on voit qu'il y a une recherche quand même d'accueil, pas seulement de personnes seules, mais de familles. Alors, je ne sais pas si vous avez poursuivi ça d'une façon plus pointue ou bien si tout simplement ça apparaissait comme ça.
Ben, sur l'aspect de famille, la conversation qu'on a eue le plus souvent, c'est que les Québécois qui avaient l'expérience avec l'Église, comme je disais Monsieur Contreau, ils ont commencé avec leurs parents ou souvent leurs grands-parents. C'était pour faire plaisir à leurs grands-parents, souvent leur niveau d'y aller à l'Église. Fait que la question qu'on se posait à eux autres, c'est là que vous avez des enfants, est-ce que vous avez l'intention d'amener vos enfants à l'Église dans le même sens? Puis la réponse était non. La réponse est souvent, je pense pas que c'est nécessaire pour eux de développer leur muscle moral, disons. Je pense qu'il y a d'autres façons qu'on peut faire en parlant comme famille, que c'est pas nécessaire d'y aller à l'Église pour avoir cette éducation-là. Fait qu'en santé, une rupture dans ce qu'il y a d'autres qui ont vécu, puis ce qu'ils vont faire avec leurs enfants aussi.
OK. La deuxième chose, c'est... Attends, maintenant, il y avait trois questions, et puis celle qui utilisait le terme dogme avait intéressé personne. Et je pense que c'est un langage, effectivement, qui est théologique et qui n'est pas dans le langage courant des personnes.
Exact, je suis d'accord. Il y avait des gens qui ils même comprenaient pas ce que ça veut dire.
C'est ça, c'est en dehors, voilà, ça vient d'une réflexion théologique, mais pas du tout d'un langage commun.
Exact.
Voilà, merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Merci à vous.
John?
Yes, thank you. I just want to tell you that my very first assignment in the church in 1969 was to go into a community where there were no churches and ask the people there if they wanted one. And I spent a summer in suburban Ottawa, mostly English, asking people, since they moved to a community where there were no churches at all, what they wanted for churches in their community. And I spent a whole summer going door to door. I must say it was very energy demanding from me to go and do this. I didn't find anybody who didn't have an opinion about church. And I could count back then on 1 in 4 people having some interest in the United Church. The conclusion of my work was, at the end of the summer, I'd found 100 people who said, yes, we want a church in our neighborhood. And those people, those 100 people, founded a congregation that celebrated its 50th anniversary just a couple of years ago. And the thought of having all of your people, not any of them knowing what the United Church is quite humbling for somebody who's spent the rest of my life since then in Quebec representing and being United Church. And to think that we have that low a profile in public awareness is kind of shocking. And I don't know if we have a message that we want to put out, but that 3 months that I did going door to door was, so I say, very, very emotionally demanding. But but it was like 3 months of a coffee hour after church, because only 2 people all summer refused to speak to me. Every other door I knocked on had something to say about the question I asked. My question was, what kind of church do you want in your neighborhood, if any?
Yeah.
So this is the other end of our recent church history. This is 50 years ago for me. And I will never forget those 3 months of going door to door, talking to strangers about church.
Yeah, well, essentially that's what I do, John, is I talk to strangers about all kinds of things.
I feel related to you.
Yeah.
I feel related.
You prompt 2 things, John, just to respond to that is number 1 is you were saying sort of humbling to realize the low awareness. I have many clients who spend a lot of time, a lot of money on advertising campaigns, and they're always shocked sometimes when the awareness of those campaigns is very low. And what I try to explain to them is you could work on something all day, every day, and it becomes so salient to you that you think everybody in the world must know about this. And then you go out into the real world and you realize that's just your perspective, because that's what you do all day, every day. And you know, quite frankly, it's the same in your situation where you're so involved in the church, and then you go into the community and realize some people don't even know about you, right? So you're not the only one who's been humble. But the other thing you were mentioning, John, is that you're referring to 1969, and it just sparked something that some participants said. I'm just saying one of the things that they feel has really changed with time is that in, you know, maybe the 70s, 80s, or even earlier than that, there was a sort of societal pressure to be at church. And that if you weren't there on Sunday, people would say, oh, you know, Tom didn't go to church on Sunday, you know, what's he on about? There was that sense of pressure that some of them felt. And they feel now that that's totally gone by the wayside. So there's no more societal impetus to go to church. It really has to come from you. And so if they lose that, then they're obviously not going to go. And so it's a little bit of a sign of the times, how things have changed, in their opinion, over the last, 50, 60 years. So thank you, John, for your perspective. Florence?
And that would be our last question.
Sure.
Florence?
Oui, merci Tom pour vraiment cette présentation, cette recherche justement qui est très positive, vu, n'est-ce pas, les pistes d'orientation et de réflexion que cela suscite pour nous sur le terrain au Québec et auprès des Québécois pour l'Église. Je voudrais m'attarder sur l'enquête selon, la partie de l'enquête selon laquelle pourquoi les Québécois sont-ils réticents, n'est-ce pas, à aller à l'Église? Et la réponse qui en est sortie, à savoir qu'ils ressassent, n'est-ce pas, le passé historique qu'ils ont vécu, et peut-être c'est la raison. Mais moi, je voulais dire ceci à propos de ça. D'après ce que je pense et que je réfléchis, que je vois, je me dis, ces personnes auprès de qui vous avez mené les enquêtes sont des personnes contemporaines, c'est-à-dire d'aujourd'hui. C'est donc dire qu'ils ne sont pas des personnes qui ont vécu l'expérience réelle sur le terrain, mais qu'aujourd'hui, ils transportent en eux l'histoire qui a été, qui est passée et qui a été, n'est-ce pas, expérimentée par leurs ancêtres ou alors leurs prédécesseurs. Mais est-ce que vous ne pensez pas que dans ce transport ou dans cette transmission, n'est-ce pas, de l'histoire et qu'ils transposent, dans lesquels ils se transposent, ils se substituent, est-ce que vous ne pensez pas que c'est un échappatoire pour donner une raison, dire c'est à cause de ça, parce que c'est déjà comme un mot de passe ou quelque chose qui est déjà connu de tous, conventionné comme ça, et qu'on trouve ça comme une raison valable et fondamentale pour justifier le refus ou de ne pas aller dans l'église, parce qu'ils n'ont pas vécu cette expérience, mais ils ont tout simplement entendu. Maintenant, je pense donc que par rapport à ça, est-ce qu'on ne peut pas penser plutôt comment, comme vous avez dit dans la suite des questions, des résultats qui en sont sortis, on ne peut pas plutôt penser une autre manière d'approcher, n'est-ce pas, les Québécois pour les intéresser à venir à l'Église, particulièrement unie du Canada, surtout que dans vos résultats, il en ressort que la confusion entre religion et Église catholique ne signifie pas qu'ils comprennent qu'il y a une différence entre l'Église unie et l'Église catholique. Par conséquent, ils peuvent se saisir de cela. Donc, on peut aussi nous-mêmes nous saisir de cela pour penser une manière ou une attitude que l'Église unie peut, n'est-ce pas, utiliser pour les approcher, plutôt que de penser, de s'appuyer toujours sur l'histoire du passé qui ne fait pas partie de leur réalité directe, puisque c'est une réalité indirecte qu'ils ont vécue. Merci.
Ah, très bien. Ben, tu sais, premièrement, juste pour être complètement clair, encore une fois, ils ont eu beaucoup d'expérience, eux autres, surtout les Québécois, avec l'Église quand ils étaient jeunes. Fait qu'ils ont passé des années dans les sessions des dimanches. Fait qu'ils parlaient leur discours venait d'une place d'expérience et non juste des perceptions. Ça, c'était un. Deux, je suis complètement d'accord avec vous que il y a le potentiel pour l'Église unie parce que c'est tellement différent de ce que les autres ont vécu et de ce qu'ils n'aiment pas de leurs expériences par le passé. Fait que je pense que d'être différent, ce qui est le cas avec vous autres, est hyper important. Parce que la seule façon, je vois, pour les faire intéresser à l'Église, c'est de dire c'est vraiment différent de ce que vous avez vécu. Parce que si c'est même similaire, ils vont dire ben laisse faire. Parce que ils ont cassé avec l'Église. Tandis que les immigrants, ils n'ont pas cette frein-là. Donc, pour répondre à ta question d'une façon succincte, je pense que une chose qui est très importante pour vous, c'est dans vos communications avec les Québécois, c'est de mettre en évidence que vous êtes différents. Peut-être de ne pas dire, mais que dire, peut-être de ne pas dire, mais de donner l'impression nous ne sommes pas l'Église catholique parce qu'on sait que vous autres puis l'Église catholique, ça ne marche pas. Fait j'espère que ça répond à votre question, mais c'est effectivement un message très important à communiquer avec eux autres.
Merci,
Et
Florence.
juste aussi, vous avez, tu sais, une chose pour clarifier aussi, c'est que les raisons pour lesquelles ils ont donné de ne pas aller à l'église, c'était extrêmement consistant. Tu sais, à chaque personne, dans chaque groupe. Fait que des fois, les gens peuvent dire des choses que c'est facile de dire, mais franchement, la fréquence avec laquelle ils ont dit la même affaire nous donne beaucoup plus de confiance dans les paroles que si c'est juste quelques personnes qui ont dit cette affaire-là.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Much appreciated. We are now
Right.
going to, so
I'll
we'll
sign off. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Tom. Now we'll have a chance to talk about that in small groups. So we're going to have breakout groups, and we have two questions you'll be asking you to talk about during these breakout groups, namely is what surprised you in this conversation, and how does this influence the way you would invite people without a church background into your community. We were hoping for 20 minutes, but we'll shorten that to 15 minutes because we're already behind schedule. And we had a very rich and very interesting conversation. So it will be interesting to gather what you will be talking about in these small groups. And we will be collecting all those notes. So please do.
So Norm is about to head you off into your small groups.
Yep, here we go.
So certainly in my group, we had a very good conversation. I hope that is also the experience that others have also felt like. So let me see, hold on there. Let me go back into a gallery view so I can see a bit better. Did I see one hand go up very quickly and disappear again?
I think
okay.
we can turn it to Barbara.
Yes, I was going to say that would be the next thing. So Barbara, talk to us about your granting.
Just before we do that, Mark, could I just ask people if they did take notes to send them to me, and we'll make a little collection of them, and so we can share them after the meeting with people. All those little rich points get shared across the regional council.
That was Judy speaking for those who don't
Oh,
recognize her
yes,
voice.
sorry.
All right, yes, so I have my notes. I'll have to rewrite them and more. Okay, Barbara.
Okay. I thought I had this all organized and I'm not sure I do, and I don't have any slides or anything like that. But the Granting and Enabling Leadership Team is the group that receives requests for funding 3 times a year, February 15th, May 15th, and September 15th. And we do this together so that if somebody's applied one place and it needs to go another, then we can make those shifts without too much invitations to reapply. And currently, we are just in June, we were given commission status, which means when we adopt a decision about funding, it is enacted. We don't have to ask for approval of either the regional council or its executive. The decision has been made. So that's one thing we are expected to report, and we expect to report. Now, I'm not sure what this motion is.
That's it, yes. I was going to say, unless you have, if you don't have the list of grants.
It's just
well,
this motion is just to receive for information.
The information that Paul presented, which is Appendix B, is a very useful document, but it is not complete. It does not include the grants that were made on October 17th. So and the mission support grants that are listed there are for this year, and the ones that we approved in October are actually for next year. So the information that has been presented is not complete. I can list off what we have decided. The Kelly Trust made a couple of small grants, and they are entirely independent. They use our form and inform our committee about what they're doing, but they are entirely independent. They make their own choices. One of the things I really want to highlight to people is the Erskine American and Mountainside funds only give money at the beginning of the year. And people are continuing to send applications in May and in September, and those are not dealt with by that group at that time. So we have referred a couple of requests to other funds in order to fund them. And I think a couple of others are going to be invited to reapply in February because they were seen as really funds for next year. And Erskine American and Mountainside will, if they have money left over, fund something for an emergency, but they want to deal with all the requests at once and make the best decisions they can for the use of the funds. So if you're wishing to receive money from Erskine American Mountainside, apply in February. So no funds from Erskine American were given at this time. The Good Samaritan Fund is for seniors, and we got a number of requests this last time, seniors ministry. We got a number of requests this last time that did not identify seniors as the recipients of the ministry, and consequently they were declined. $10,000 was given to New Hope seniors through Montreal West United Church. Union United Church in Montreal was given just under $19,000 for their seniors ministry, and $12,000 was granted to Beaconsfield for their seniors ministry. But the others were not granted because they did not appear to fit the necessary, fit the terms of the fund. But $10,000 was granted from the strategic fund to Beaconsfield for their refugee integration support program and for their women's collective, and they'll have to figure out how that divides between it. We have the Rosemary Lambie Fund, which is for Indigenous, working with Indigenous ministries. And we are granting $6,000 to the Eastern Door for sharing our stories. And we need to highlight there that the maximum that we can grant in any year is $20,000. And there's no point in applying for $25,000 from that fund. It's not possible for us to grant it. We are granting $25,000 to Sainte Therese, to the Laurentian Area Ministry. And we probably have enough money for another couple of years in that ministry. But after that, we'll be looking at other things. Mission support was a little different this year. We had agreed at our May meeting to grant both Montreal City Mission and St. Columba House stable funding for 5 years of $150,000. And the Finance and Extension Board very graciously increased the amount of money we received so that that didn't take money away from others. I can list the numbers. It would be hard to keep track of it, but that information will go out to our ministries.
And maybe, Barbara, we can make sure we have an updated list for folks after that.
Yes, yes.
I know Brian and Paul had submitted a more recent one this week, so I don't know if it included that or not, but.
Okay, because
if you can make sure that
when I looked at the document that was in my file, it was not up to date. Now, if there was a new one, I didn't see it.
Yeah, it was updated, and it includes all the grants that have been issued up until now.
Okay, I didn't see that in the paperwork. But I guess if there are things, we have a strategic fund. That's where money from the sale of church property is going in part, and that maximum grant is $10,000. And we also have the Trois Rivières Fund to support French ministries, and that maximum is $7,000. And the challenge is that our expenses in the church are growing the same way they are everywhere else, but the funds are not growing at that rate. And so we're struggling a bit to try to be fair to everybody and yet still support both new and old ministries. So so to say, if you're applying for Erskine American Mountainside money, apply in February. You're applying to the Good Samaritan, make sure you highlight the seniors ministry. And for all of the times that you apply, if you're applying for funding, try to make a connection with the fact that we are the United Church and that this is part of our ministry. Sometimes there are lots of good programs out there, but why should the church fund this rather than somebody else? That's part of the question we're trying to answer.
All right.
That's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. So we have a motion here, and who is moving and seconding that motion? Is that you moving it?
I will move it, yes.
Okay, and Mayor, is that you seconding the motion, or is that a question? Mayor is seconding the motion.
Yeah.
All right, then. Any questions on this motion before we call the question to vote?
I see there's a question in the chat from Rosemary asking if the vote could be delayed until the.
But we do, what was posted up to 3 days ago is actually the full list, is what I've been told. So the things that folks are looking at should be accurate.
Okay, if we have the accurate list, that's okay. That was just the question came.
Yeah.
Right.
Concern about voting on something if it was incomplete information.
Okay.
Okay, then. So ready for the question? So Kent, will you put up the poll?
Monsieur le Président, je suis content de vous dire qu'il y a encore 60 personnes en ligne, donc ça c'est bon, vu l'heure, et que 50 personnes ont voté, 49 en faveur avec une abstention.
So the motion is carried. All right.
So I will quickly show you the ballot for that you'll be voting on tomorrow for the commissioners, so you can see who it is that you're going to be voting on. All the biographies of these folks are online, and so they're available to see as we speak. And just a reminder that we are choosing 5 in each category. The category to the left is the lay category, and the category to the right is the ordered category. I know some of you are going to wonder why. There are 2 people who don't have Rev in front of their names. And let me just say that that's because they are candidates who are currently in appointment and therefore are considered ministry personnel for the purposes of general council recognition. And it also means that they have voting privileges at our regional council meetings. So that's the difference between those 2 lists, and we'll be choosing 5 of each of those lists tomorrow. So there's the information for you.
Joel is making a note.
So just the chair had expressed being an alternate, perhaps. Is that the same?
No,
Mark?
that's not. That's it would be too complicated to do that. Yep. Remember, Joel, we talked about that at the nominations team.
Okay.
All right. So we have no motion for that. That's for tomorrow, right, Garrick?
That's correct.
Okay. So then we are moving on to the
closing benediction, but I think we have a quick announcement to make before we go there that I think Jan would like to say.
Yes, I was going to say Jan, and that's Jan Jorgensen. Jan, will you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for this time. Project ISKU from the Native Women's Shelter sent an announcement today. Today is the fourth year anniversary of Mary Saviaduk's death. She was an extremely loved and respected person throughout Nunavik, and she was tragically killed in her own home. And they've asked us to light candles and say her name. So I've lit this candle, and I will bring up the paper and try to say her name again. Mary Saviaduk. And they would especially like prayers for her family, her friends, her community, and on this, the anniversary, but also on Monday, because her murderer will be sentenced. And it's going to be a very emotional, difficult time. And in doing this for Mary, we're also thinking about all the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited people. And so we must remember and never stop working for justice and to work against prejudice. So thank you for this time. Many blessings.
Thank you, John. Virginia. I think you will give us a farewell benediction until tomorrow.
Mute myself. Heavenly Creator, parent to us all, as we have reached the end of this part of our two-day meeting, give you thanks for all that has been discussed, for every accomplishment that we have witnessed today. We pray that our faithful discipleship and love in action will carry over into tomorrow's meeting. Until we come together tomorrow, may you, O gracious and ever-loving God, bless us and give us rest preparing us for the work to come with the new dawn.
All right. Well, thank you, Virginia. And this ends this evening meeting, this part of the session. So I'll be seeing you all again tomorrow morning, and probably more of you and some different people. So I wish you all a good evening, a good night. Sleep well, sleep tight. And God bless you all.